Hi there and welcome to RYOBI Tool Talk. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jules.
And on this episode we're going to cover everything to do with handheld saws. Now depending on what sort of job you have to do, each one of these saws is going to perform a different task. So we're going to start off with circular saws. Now a lot of people can be a little bit anxious with circular saws, but I'm going to cover off those myths for you right now. Because when it comes to circular saws, the most dangerous part of a circular saw is the person using the saw. So as long as you use it safely and use it correctly, you'll be perfectly fine. The first thing to remember is circular saws designed for cutting straight lines and straight lines only, unless you're cutting a massive, wide, humongous circle, all right? Straight cuts only with these things. The advantage of these also is that they can cut through quite thick material. You can get different sizes of circular saws. This is a standard 7¼ inch circular saw. You can get smaller and you can get larger, but this is generally the most common size. Now, if you are going to cut different materials, remember that they won't cut through things like steel or aluminium. It is mainly timber-based materials like pine and MDF and chipboard and melamine, that sort of stuff. But you can also cut polycarbonate roofing, which is what I'm doing myself at home at the moment. Now, one thing too is, depending on the type of material you're cutting will depend on the type of blade you're going to use. Because you can get blades with different size teeth on them. You can get blades with less teeth on them, designed more for ripping and cutting sort of thicker materials. And then you've got your finer tooth blade, which has a lot more teeth for finer cutting, which will give you a smoother cut and designed for cross-cutting across the grain of your timber. Now, also with your circular saw, it is important to make sure when you're using it to line up your saw with the work you're using. Jules here is going to show us how to do that, to give you an idea of just how easy they are to use. And we'll go through a few little bits and pieces along the way. So I'll pass this over to Jules.
Cool. So before I get my hands on this tool, there's a couple of, safety tips as well, just to consider, guys. So when you're using saws, make sure you're using your personal protective equipment, so your PPE. Part of that needs to be your glasses and then also your ear protection. For us ladies that are also using power tools, making sure that your luscious locks are kind of tucked away as well. So just chuck them back quickly and then we'll get going with this one today.
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to have long hair, that's the go. I am follically challenged, so I don't have to worry about that.
Oh, you do good. You do good, Steve. You do good. So I'm going to chuck these ones on, make sure that we're nice and safe, and then also ear protection. A couple of things as well to note, guys, too, when using circular saws, or any saws really, is just make sure you clamp down the material that you're going to be cutting nice and tightly to your work surface. That just stops it from vibrating. With circular saws, there's not so much vibration, but when we go through Recip saws later, they vibrate quite significantly. So make sure you've clamped that down. Today we're going to be, as Steve mentioned, doing a straight cut. To assist in doing that, we're going to be using a rafter square. So that just makes sure that the cut is nice and straight, and we're actually going to be running the base of the circular saw against the rafter square itself. Yeah? That's
absolutely.
About the long and short of it, really.
Yeah. Just make sure when you're clamping to move that clamp across to the left a little bit, Jules. Perfect.
Yep. Did notice that one. That would have been a bit.
And one other thing too, guys, just before we go forward and Jules does her cut, it is also important to set the saw up correctly before you actually make the cut, depending on the thickness of the timber you're going to cut through. Make sure the battery's out for this. You want to make sure that your blade is sitting just below the timber you're going to be cutting. And the reason for that is you want more teeth doing the cutting at any one time. If you have the blade all the way down, you're going to end up having more blade come through the bottom of your material, which is unsafe for starters, but it's also going to put more stress on the saw when you're doing the cut. So we've set this saw up specifically for this 35mm stud pine to make sure it's going to be easy to push through, and when using your cordless circular saws, it actually increases the run time as well. So well worth remembering that to make sure you set your saw up before you do your cut.
Yep. Cool, so we're going to get going, ear protection in. When you're starting your cut as well, just make sure that the saw actually gets up to full speed before you go into the timber itself. So I'll demonstrate now. But essentially with the square, we're going to have it just placed here, nice and nice and clamped with your hand. When you're actually putting your saw or getting your saw ready for use, just line that up against the side of the rafter square and the base plate. Cool, so we're going to get it up to full speed now, making sure that the blade isn't actually touching the wood before you start. it's pretty much as simple as that.
And that's about it, guys, when it comes to circular saws. They are a simple tool to use. You do just need to take a couple of steps to ensure that you've got your material clamped. You start off nice and easy, nice and slow. Let the tool do the job. A lot of issues can come from trying to force a tool through something when it's not designed or not ready to go through it. So let the saw do the work. Make sure you take your time and you'll be nice and safe as well.
They are quite a, I guess, a messy saw in the fact that they produce a lot of sawdust as well. So I've got quite a bit on my pants now. If you're doing more than one cut, you can also connect it to a dust extraction system. So this one is a cordless one here. You can also get cordless workshop vacs, or if you are working in a workshop, you can just get your standard corded ones. They're really handy just to reduce the amount of mess in your shed. Also make sure that, you know, you're kept nice and clean as well. And that, you know, for those of you who take pride in their shed, we all know that a nice clean workshop.
Yeah, well, another good reason for collecting your dust off your tools and so forth is if you're doing a little bit of woodworking and you want to fill some holes in your bench, say you've got a hole here you want to fill, it's good to actually use that dust to mix with glue and then put that in to fill your hole. It hides a lot better than just your regular putty. So it is worth keeping that dust rather than letting it go straight on your floor. So that's it for circular saws, guys. We're going to go through jigsaws now. So when it comes to your jigsaws, the main difference between a jigsaw and a circular saw is that this is designed to cut a curved line, not so much straight. They will cut straight, but not very well. You have to put a lot of clamping on there, you have to use fences. It's just because the blades on these are a lot smaller and a lot thinner. I had my blade floating around here and he's vanished somewhere, but that's all right, we'll crack open a new one.
There we go.
Oh, there we go, he was hiding. So the blades, as you can see, are much smaller in size compared to a circular saw blade. So when you're cutting with these, all the same sort of issues you still need to be aware of. You need to make sure you start nice and soon. You need to make sure you work nice and calmly and easily, and also ensure that the blade itself isn't touching the timber before you start. Now with these, because they're versatile, a little bit more versatile than a circular saw, you can cut different types of material. So you can cut things like your glass, believe it or not, tiles, metal, steel, aluminium, all that sort of thing. Just depending on the type of blades you have, you've got different type of blades that you can use. These are mainly for timber, these are all for steel, and you've got blades like this which you can actually use on ceramic tiles and porcelain tiles and glass and so forth. So they're incredibly good in that regard because they are more dependent on the type of blade you put in them to give you the right sort of cut. All right. Now, using one of these is a little bit more trickier to some degree because of the way they work, because the blade will sort of want to follow its own path. So you have to control that. Now, I'm going to show you a little tip here. I'm just going to pop this blade in for just 1 second. Now, I just want to show you something, because this is what we call a D-handle jigsaw. So it's sort of shaped like a D, which means when I'm holding it right in the middle of the saw. Now the blade is in front of where I'm holding the saw. And as I turn the saw to make a cut, I'm actually trying to turn it in the middle of the saw, which is not good. And that'll actually force the blade to bend. So you have to pivot and turn where the blade is. I know that sounds simple, but it can be quite difficult when you're trying to follow a line on your work and you end up actually bending the blade and they can snap quite easily. So always remember, when you turn the jigsaw, don't turn it in the center of the jigsaw here, turn it actually at the blade. And that way you'll end up with a much more accurate cut when you're working with it. Okay. Now with it comes to jigsaws as well, I did mention that they can cut straight lines. To do that, you would probably need some sort of a fence, something like this, like the rafter square Jules was just using, that you can go and guide along, but it's not going to be anywhere near as clean or fine or smooth as what you'd get with a circular saw. So let's just say you were cutting a dog door out of a door. This is the puppy you would use right here. Drill your 4 holes in the corners, you use your jigsaw to cut out your nice square hole for your cat or your dog, whatever you've got. So I'm going to pass this over to Jules, and again she's going to show us just how easy these are to use and have a go of. Give you that one there, and what I might do, Jules, is I'm going to give you a scrolling blade. And the reason why I want to give you one of these type of blades is you're going to notice that this blade here and that blade there, there's a difference in the thickness of the actual blade, which means these will give you a very, very tight turning circle, allowing you to really create those nice tight turns and curves if you're doing any form of craft work.
Yeah,
so I'll
cool.
give you that one there, Jules.
Yeah, easy. So guys, it's pretty easy to actually insert the blade into the jigsaws here. All you need to do is just pop it in this little part here. Make sure it's nice and secure, pushed in, give it a little jiggle. Just to make sure that it's in properly. It's the same thing with circular saws as with jigsaws. It's just make sure that the blade is going at full speed before you start your cut. I'm going to do a really nice curvy cut once I've got the battery in. But yeah, as Steve mentioned, really good for any kind of craft work, but given the versatility, it's really good for any DIY to have around their house.
Just make sure you wear your earbuds as well.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
I'll tell you what, guys, it can be very easy to forget your safety gear, so always make sure it's front of mind.
Yeah.
Okay, you've always got your safety gear at hand.
No, it's good safety, Steve, I'm going to call him. It's good. Cool, so base plate firmly planted against the material. Make sure that you get your saw up to full speed before you start, and away we go, really. Cool. So as you can see that we've got quite a nice intricate curve here. You could go even with the scroll blade. You could make sure that you do some even smaller or tighter curves if you needed to. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other little feature you've got on jigsaws that is sometimes extremely useful, and it's what we call a pendulum or orbital action, and that's done via this little switch on the side. And what it allows you to do is in normal mode, in standard mode, the jigsaw blade will just go straight up and down like this. All right. When you put the orbital action from, where did I put it? From standard all the way down to say number 3, it'll actually make the blade rotate like this. Now the advantage of doing that is you might be in a situation where you don't really want to do a nice curve, you just want to dock a bit of timber off or get off the excess before you go around with the route or something like that. You don't care what the finish is like. Then you'd put the orbital action on. It does cut faster, but it also leaves a more chipped, rougher edge. So it's sort of a catch-22. You get the speed out of it, but you get a rougher edge and a rougher cut. But it's also good for when you're cutting thicker material. So let's say you're putting a sink into a bench top, something like that, and you're cutting through 30mm chipboard. Then you definitely want to use full orbital action there, because otherwise you'll be cutting really, really slow. It'll take you forever, and it'll probably just burn and destroy the teeth on your jigsaw blade. So when it comes to jigsaws, guys, extremely versatile, easy to use. Again, it's more down to the blade as well. Make sure you get good quality blades. Make sure they're designed for the material that you're cutting. And then, as Jules showed you then, take your time, nice and easy, nice and smooth, and you'll end up with a perfect job every time. So from jigsaws, we go to probably one of my personal favourites, and that is what we call the Recip saw or the reciprocating saw. Some of you might even know it as a demolition saw. These things are designed for absolutely just chopping stuff off when you need to. There's no finesse with this tool. It's all about just getting the job done. And just like a jigsaw, you can get multiple blades for this. You can get blades like this here, a pack which will do timber and steel. You can get longer blades which have carbide teeth, so it'll cut through nail embedded timber. You can even now get blades that'll cut through aerated concrete, flush cutting blades. It's all about the type of blade that you put in the machine. The great thing about these is because they're so aggressive, they can be used for jobs you might not have thought about. So we have a blade like this, which is almost looks like a blade off a bow saw, and this is designed for pruning. And I tell you what, if you've got trees out the back of your house or you need to chop off some limbs off a tree, then this is the tool for you if chainsaws are a little bit off-putting for you. Because when it comes to chainsaws, different category altogether, they can be a bit daunting for people. But a Recip saw, and you're about to see Jules have a go here and show you just how easy it is to do, you can cut through branches twice the width of this quite comfortably. All right. So yes, they are designed for docking material, the rough sort of cutting, but also for pruning as well. Now, one thing to remember with these as well, you can get your different types in terms of your brushed motors and your brushless motors. Brushless is better, you get more runtime, more reliability, a lot more performance. So sometimes, depending on the job you're doing, you might need to go up to the next level. So I'm going to again pass this over to Jules, and she's going to show you just how easy these are to use and give you a few tips along the way. Sorry, I'll pass it that way.
Thank you very much.
Nice and safe.
Not that it's got a battery in there.
No,
so that's
no.
why they do call you
Safety
Safety
first.
Steve, right?
Safety Steve.
Yeah, also one of my favourite tools, guys. Really, great for any kind of demolition work, as you mentioned. If you need to cut through, walls, if you're putting in any kind of windows and the like.
Renovating's perfect for renovating.
Absolutely, and the fact that they're a bit of a beast of a tool as well, so you can cut through nails if you need to with different blades and the like. So again, with our safety equipment, this one we're going to cut slightly differently, but the principle is very much the same. You need to make sure that you clamp down your material into the wood. These ones here, because they do create a lot of vibration, you want to make sure that where you're actually anchoring your clamp is really nice and close to the actual cut area that you're trying to lop off. So just make sure that they're nice and tight and that's not going to go anywhere at all, because you will see it wobble around. If I can please have my blade.
Yes, it helps with the blade, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so just before I pass this over to Jules, this is just a standard wood cutting blade. It's nothing fancy, so you don't really need to go overboard. You certainly wouldn't be using, say, the pruning blade to cut through something like a stud pine. It'll chip it far too much.
Yeah.
So this is a good blade to have.
And they're universal fit, aren't they?
100%.
Yep.
The fitting on the back of these is standard across all reciprocating saws. Well, actually, I shouldn't say all, but pretty much all 99.9% of Recip saws in the market will take that fitting.
Got to do my ear protection again, Steve.
Get those in.
You too, and glasses, please.
I'm ready to go.
I know you're a safe 1.5 metres away, but
I'm over here.
Just don't want any stray chips.
Well, I've seen you use one of these before, so I'm going to stay well over here.
You should feel very safe.
I'm very safe.
Okay, cool. So guys, when I'm using this one today, I'm just going to make sure that my hand's nice and anchored on the top of the tool as well. Make sure that the foot is against the material itself as well. And away we go. So make sure the blade gets up to full speed before we cut in. So as you can probably see, there's quite a significant amount of vibration. That's just standard with all Recip saws. This one's actually, lower vibration than a lot of the other ones that you can get on the market. So it definitely makes for a comfortable cut, especially if you are doing the demo work, then you require it for quite some time.
Yeah, these are a very, very handy tool to have. As you mentioned, especially if you're doing any form of renovation work or just DIY work around the house, they do come in handy. The other advantage of them is they can get into sort of tighter areas. If you were using the Jigsaw like we had before, or the circular saw, they're quite bulky machines with the blade right up close to the tool, whereas these, as you can see with a blade like this, is going to extrude very, very far out of the tool. So you can actually get right in quite far, which is very advantageous for these. When it comes to Recip saws as well, and Jules mentioned it, you do need to make sure if you are cutting material that is loose, that it is clamped firmly. 9 times out of 10, you probably won't need to worry about it because you might be chopping a limb off a tree or you might be cutting down an existing wall, so it won't be too much of a concern. But the main thing is to keep the foot or the shoe of the Recip saw up against your material nice and firm. Because if it's not and you hit it back from here, it'll start bouncing back away from you. So that's your Recip saw there. When it comes to almost our last tool, which is the multi-tool, this is, it's a saw, but it's a multi-product saw. So it will cut, it will sand, it will grind, it will do quite a few things. But being that it's part of the saw family, we thought we'd give it a bit of a show. The advantage of the multi-tool is it's called a multi-tool for that exact reason. You can cut multiple materials depending on the blade you're using, just like your Jigsaw and your Recip saw. At the moment, I've just got a standard timber cutting blade in there, but I can put a grout grinding blade in there. I can put sander in there. I've even got, where is it, this one here. This is designed for sanding down your cement sheet and tiles and so forth as well, and even just standard scrapers. So this is incredibly versatile to have. If you're using this to, say, cut a hole in plaster, or you're using it for a hole in some timber, cutting away some hinge recesses, this can be absolutely invaluable. Even floating floors is you almost couldn't nowadays use, couldn't put a floating floor down without using one of these little guys. This particular one has an articulating head to get you into those tight, awkward areas, also with variable speed. But the coolest feature of this that I like is it has a quick release blade, so your blades can come off, Blades go on. Sorry, I can't see what I'm doing. Do it around that way. And then she's on, ready to go. One thing I'm just going to share with you before I pass over to Jules to show us how it works is when you're using these, you need to make sure the tool is constantly moving. So if I was to start this up and dig it into the timber right here, it's just going to dig in and bury, then stop. All right, I need to make sure that I'm constantly moving the tool just a little bit, especially in the harder materials like timber. Plaster, not so much. Alrighty, but being such an easy tool to use, it's very user friendly. Alrighty, so I'm again going to pass this one over to Jules, and she's going to demonstrate just how well these things can work.
Yeah, they're quite cool actually, with the fact that you can use the sanding pads on there as well. So I don't remember if we covered this one in the sanders episode, but obviously if you've got kind of more detailed areas that you need to sand, the construction, the delta pad is really good for getting into nice tight corners as well.
Alrighty.
Cool.
Give us a demo, Jules.
Yep.
How does she work?
Cool, so I'm just going to lop off a little corner just over here.
Yeah.
Cool, so it's really good if you do need to make those kind of unique style cuts. You wouldn't be able to do that corner really very easily with any of the other saws. So this is probably the best option for you guys. So as Steve mentioned before, we just need to make sure that it's constantly moving. That's pretty much all there is to it.
And I'll tell you what, how fun are they to use as well?
Yeah, they are really fun.
Yeah.
They cut through like a knife through butter.
Oh, they do. It's a good tool to use because I tell you why. These multi-tools, because they're so multifunction, it's the sort of thing that you'll have a very specific job. You just need to cut this here at that angle, this, and that's the perfect thing for you. Alrighty, so they're a really good addition to your shed, well and truly. So that's it for our handheld portable saws, guys. Your circular saws designed for cutting straight lines primarily. Your jigsaws, actually I'll bring them all back so we can see them all again.
Clean up your messy
I
workspace
can't help it.
Steve. Can't trust
you know you're in a good shed when it's a mess. So your circular saws are designed for cutting a straight lines only. Make sure you adjust the height of that blade to match the thickness of your material. When you come to your jigsaw, these are designed for cutting curvy lines primarily. Make sure you've got a good control over it and you follow the line or what are your markings that you've got with the blade, not with your hand. When you come to your Recip saw, this thing you just need to really hold on tight. It's not a really fine sort of tool. It is designed to be aggressive, so make sure you're holding on tight when you use it. And one thing I will actually say, always prepare for the cut through point. Now, Jules has used this quite a few times before and demonstrated it really well. When you finish your cut with one of these, the last thing you want to do is cut, and then come through like this. Because you'll be cutting through a bit of timber and eventually get to the point where you're not cutting through anymore. And the last thing you want is you into your leg, all right? No one wants that. So make sure you control the saw at the end, just like Jules did before, and stop, and you'll be fine. And then the multi-tool's designed for multiple materials, multiple tasks, with multiple blades out there that you can get. Now the last type of saw we've got is our compound miter saw. We're not really going to go too much into these right now, but this is designed more for docking. So if you're doing a deck and you want to cut them off all to size, or you want to cut them off on a 45, even cornice work, skirting, architraves, picture frames, that sort of work, these are perfect for. You can even cut aluminium with these type of saws with the right blade. Same with the circular saw, you can get a specific aluminium blade to cut through aluminium when you need to. Now, I thought we had a new one of these out, Jules, do we?
We do. We've got a 216mm new sliding miter saw. So,
yeah, beautiful.
That's really good for things.
Well, the advantage of a sliding compound miter saw is, unlike this one, you've only got a certain depth of cut. So I've only cut up to about, say, 100mm. Whereas a sliding compound miter saw will cut generally up to about 300, 250, 300. So it's great for shelving and wider material. Floorboards as well, fantastic for those. So when it comes to that sort of work, your compound miter saw might be the go for you. Yeah. I think we've covered everything off. I'm hoping that you've got a bit out of this, and remember you can ask us questions at any time. Please feel free. But I think hopefully we've covered it all, have we, Jules?
Yeah, Yeah, I think you
Beautiful.
did a job that was a cut above, Steve.
Oh, stop it, stop it. So that's about it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and myself and Jules will see you in the next one. Cheers.
See you guys. Thank you.